Hello and welcome to the CX Files podcast. I'm your host, Mark Hillary. This week I'm speaking with Wendy Shlensky, who is the Global Head of Public Relations and Analyst Relations at Hinduja Global Services based in New York. HGS is a well-known business services company that often manages to punch above their weight, and I saw Wendy speaking about some of their plans recently at the CXOutsourcers conference in Windsor, UK. I called Wendy at her office in New York after the conference was over and asked her to summarize some of the key takeaways from the event and what she thinks about what's happening right now in business process outsourcing and CX in general. Okay, so let's go straight to the interview. Okay, Wendy, so we were at the CXOutsourcer event in Windsor, UK recently, and they featured a wide array of topics, subjects. It was things from the future of BPO to how AI and other technologies are affecting the industry. You were there as well and you were speaking. So what were your key takeaways from the event?
I think my number one takeaway was what we need to do as an industry. I think we really need to change the perception of our industry in the market, especially given the protectionist political shadows in both the US and the UK. One of the key issues is how enterprise companies view the outsourcing of personnel. Outsourcing seems to be considered a secret, whether it's outsourcing your contact center, your infrastructure, your application development, your finance and accounting. And I would argue instead that outsourcing really needs to be seen as much more strategic. I think companies can really take advantage of an expert in their field, in our case, customer experience outsourcing, or commonly referred to as contact center outsourcing. For example, most people I know outsource one of their most important strategic activities. They send their kids to school. They outsource the schooling of their most important asset, their kids, to education specialists. And I think the general public, our clients, our prospects, need to reframe their thinking about how outsourcing is simply hiring an expert to help them with this strategic area of their business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess that's important today because it's actually getting far more complex as well.
Exactly. I think my other big takeaway was really about talent. There are tons of questions and comments about, are people hiring the right talent? Are you engaging that talent? How are you training that talent? And Peter Ryan had a great data point that talked about that training programs for new agents was the second most important investment priority for customer experience decision makers. And I personally like this one because HGS was recently awarded a top 125 training award by Training Magazine. And I always like to see that it's nice for us to get recognition for being an expert for a high priority area and one that helps train people and is providing jobs. Mm-hmm. I think my third takeaway was really your history lesson, because you look back to the year 2000, which is less than 20 years ago, and you had some really great stats to remind us of how far we've come. Like in 2000, you said that Kmart sales were 13 times Amazon's in the year 2000. But now, where's Kmart? Where's Amazon? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or Alibaba had sales of $1 million, and yet it took them 85 seconds to reach $1 billion on Singles Day. Just that kind of growth is phenomenal, and it's all fueled by technology. I also really liked your point about how weather patterns affect consumers. As a couple of months ago, a visitor visited our newest center in Jacksonville, where I saw our Roadside Assistance Center of Excellence, and the Weather Channel was up all over the TVs. It's something I didn't think about going in, but weather is a huge barometer for roadside assistance.
Yeah. Well, and that point about the digital technologies is interesting because there was actually a lot of discussion at the event about this human versus digital question and how organizations are managing to deploy humans but either augment them with technology or even replace them with AI. So what are you guys doing at HGS, and what are your clients asking for?
So at HGS, we're really looking at integrating humans and digital where it makes sense. and we call this our bots and brains methodology. We think that as a disruptor brand, we need to stand out, and we've chosen to stand out by proactively pitching bots and brains together versus just a traditional voice play, or by just giving the customer what they put in the RFP. Like, we're not a just answer the question kind of company. We try to really come up with a thought-provoking answer that will really resonate with not necessarily what the clients think they want today, but what the clients may need tomorrow. And one of Mike Havar's points was about appropriate automation. And this resonated really well for me because of our approach of quality over quantity. So a lot of times people say like, oh, we just want this automated. But, does it make sense to automate the whole thing? And working with a process expert such as HGS, we're able to have the knowledge and the process expertise to break down the processes into components and figure out what to automate, how much to automate, what is really important to automate. Because while we could automate 100% of the process, the last 10% could be prohibitively expensive and really not worth it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting because you talked there, I think, in the last point about both the expertise in outsourcing as well as now the sort of complexity of processes that you're having to deliver. And it's interesting because a lot of companies still see companies in the business process outsourcing space just as contact centers, and they pay for the full-time equivalent. They pay for the number of agents times the number of hours actually worked. And yet the industry today is so much more complex. It's clear that what we're delivering is an experience across the entire customer journey and not just the post-sale customer complaining about something. So how do we get away from this idea that and look at customer service as something more than just contact centers? And how do we charge for that? I mean, surely the financial model has to change as well.
I definitely think the financial model has to change, and a lot of our executives are talking about that. I think one of the areas that we've been pushing hard is the gain share model. So, like for instance, a lot of our clients say we want innovation, we want transformation, and again, those are buzzwords in the industry. But do the clients really want to pay for it? And part of the challenge is that the business owner wants the innovation and transformation, but then they push the contract down to procurement. And procurement is incentivized and mandated to drive down the price, which doesn't leave much room for the provider to be able to invest in the relationship. And so this is where a gain share play could come into help this situation. So often the investment that a provider would make would be in the client upfront as the provider gets to know the client's true needs and, say, actual call volume. So perhaps instead of an FTE model, the pricing moves from an FTE model to a pay-per-transaction or a pay-per-call. So using just easy math, because I'm in marketing, and easy math is much easier for me than complex math. Say a client is paying $1 a call, and the call costs the provider 90 cents. So right now, the provider's making 10 cents on every call. If the provider can lower their own costs through automation, and then offer a gain share model, share some of the savings. So for example, if the provider can lower the cost to 70 cents, so now they would have a full 30 cents of profit, maybe they would take, instead of taking the full 30 cents and the full additional 20 cent savings, the outsourcer could take 10 cents and give 10 cents back to their clients. So that would be a savings to the client.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask. I mean, I guess we often see clients that ask about how their partner can help them to innovate their service. And I guess this sort of method could also help introduce some innovation as well, I guess.
Exactly, because a lot of the innovation could come through automation or AI or machine learning. And a lot of it has to happen more once provider gets in there and gets to understand what's really happening inside the organization and use the knowledge that they have from market research and from working with other clients to create what would be innovative and transformative at that particular client. So, for example, for one of our clients, we saved them about $1 million within the first 6 months of the engagement. And at $1 million, that's a great amount of money. And after a year, we had saved them an additional $7 million. And that additional savings in that additional 6 months came from training the bot and figuring out efficiencies that we could put into the program. So just like it takes time to train a human, it also takes time to train the bot or the AI. And a lot of people don't understand that like they think, you just plug in the bot and it just works and it does what it's supposed to do and it saves you tons of money. But there's a lot of training and time and energy that needs to be invested in training a bot.
Mm-hmm. And would you say then, if we were looking, what to expect for the year ahead, this idea of realistic digital transformation then, actually getting in there, not expecting something to happen overnight, but as the partner understands the systems and processes, then they can really start to deliver transformation. So would you say this is one of the key areas to look out for?
I think this is one of the key areas to look out for. I think that working collaboratively with a provider, having the provider analyze what kind of call volumes you're getting, figuring out, why people are calling, and are there different avenues and different channels that they can deploy to help lower the call volume and at the same time increase customer satisfaction.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. Please take a moment to review the podcast because this helps other listeners to find it. And if you have any suggestions, then get in touch with me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'm at Mark Hillary with 2 L's, or just search Google for Mark Hillary.